Steve, it seems to me as though this happens all over college football, not just related to Ohio State, but since they are one of the big boys, they get targeted that this is a huge game. This is a massive game. Let's see how good you can play against this team. And then once it happens, well, they really weren't that good. And this seems to be tagged because of the Penn State offensive performance in that game, more given to the Penn State ineptness than the Ohio State dominance on that side of the ball.
Yeah, it was very much inept. I have to say that. It was so inept that in the third quarter, I got up, milled around. I think I came down and visited with Tony and Kevin a little bit in the press box, said my hellos, went down to the Penn State side of the press box, said hello to Mark Brennan, who joined us last week on the show, and the people I know down in that end. I went down, got a celebratory box of popcorn. I mean, there was no threat by Penn State's offense in that game. Their defense was probably a 9.5 out of 10, as was the Ohio State defense. Two great defenses, but Penn State's offense they had no downfield threat. They couldn't run the ball, and they couldn't convert third down. So when you put all that into a blender and shake it up, you get one touchdown and 2 field goals or whatever it was that they had. I mean, this was a team that was averaging 44 points per game coming in, and they were held to 12. So I think a lot of it's the Ohio State defense just played lights out. And you had a young guy, Jermaine Matthews, at cornerback, filled in, did a bang-up job. You had young guys, Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry, filling in on the defensive line. And each of them had a sack. JT Tuimoloau had a sack. Just a defense that really came together. It was a command performance, and this was what you wanted to see. I think Ohio State, again, comes out of this game, and you kind of scratch your head because Ohio State, for years under Ryan Day and Urban, won these games on the basis of just overwhelming you with their offense. And that's really not the case anymore. It's kind of like Marvin Harrison Jr. is one guy holding up the planet right now like this. And, everybody else is thriving because he's the one there holding up the planet. So they got to find, obviously it would help if they get Travion Henderson and Emeka Egbuka in particular back in the lineup this week. Might look and feel a little bit better, even if they're not quite 100% just yet. But, a lot of ways to look at it. I prefer to look at it that was a very good Penn State team that they played, and they took care of them. They eventually pulled away in the fourth quarter and had a 2-touchdown lead and won by 8 points. So I take that as a win.
This one reminded me of the 2007 Michigan game where I don't know if that was like a 14-3 game or whatever, but Ohio State was never threatened because Michigan couldn't throw the ball because Chad Henne had a bum shoulder, and there was just no threat there. So you didn't ever necessarily need enough points or too many points or many points to get the win. But watching this one from the press box, Ohio State left some points on the board, and I'm not just talking about the 4th and 2, that one, or the muffing a punt essentially and losing a possession, but they had receivers running open. They had some open receivers that Kyle McCord didn't hit, and they could have put some more points on the board to make this one even uglier than what it was. I knew immediately afterwards, though, and I think we probably said it in the post game, that this is one of those games where in the SEC everybody would be lauding the defense, but when it happens in the Big Ten, they talk about how bad the offenses are, and so I think we've kind of seen some revisionism there regarding that sort of talk afterwards, and we saw it again after Notre Dame. It's like, well, how good can they be when they don't even put 11 guys on a defense and you're trying to diminish it? But both of those teams are still ranked in the top 15, and they're still gonna beat some teams. But I think Ohio State's defense was obviously way too much for Penn State's offense. And Steven said they're scoring 44 points a game. They're only scoring 34 in Big Ten. So like, they had built a lot of their stuff on Delaware and UMass, and this was much more representative of what they were. But obviously Ohio State took it to another level, and there was just the secondary is playing so well right now. And if Drew Aller was more accurate, there probably would have been more interceptions. But because a lot of the passes weren't near anybody, you can't intercept those. Leaving that game, I all season long I've been saying Penn State was going to beat Michigan, and then watching Penn State the past week and seeing them more and more and more, I would like to retract my previous statements on the future matchup between the Wolverines and Nittany Lions.
There seem to be top 5 and 10 teams across the country that are squeaking by the likes of Houston, Arizona State, UCF, and those games seem to be judged and evaluated similar to Ohio State, controlling the game for the better portion of it against Penn State. And yes, Penn State may not quite be as good as we thought, maybe, but I thought that was a solid effort. Again, Kyle McCord, yes, he came out and he made the first 5 throws in a manner in which you would expect, nothing crazy good. But then all of a sudden, for the next 15 throws, he was all over the place, missing guys on obvious slants when they were wide open, throwing a ball to Carnell Tate down the seam where he really needed to. Man, Tate had his guy, and he was breaking free from him. Throw it out there, get it out there. And he tried to gun it and threw it about 5 feet behind him.
There's another one. There's another one where he's throwing to Tate in the end zone, and Marvin Harrison is completely alone over the middle of the field. Like there's no defender with him, and he's just, running a crossing route and just things like that. That I think the more Kyle plays, he'll be fine. And he has great stretches, but there are also still the valleys that Ohio State is dealing with right now.
All right, I guess we'll stay with the offense. And Mayan Williams was a battering ram in this one. Not that he was picking up too much yardage, but at least able to move the sticks in key situations. And again, 62 yards on 24 carries doesn't seem like it's going to be a formula for down the road. But at the same time, there was some level of effectiveness at times, as long as he didn't try to bounce it wide against that defense.
Yeah, they ran was it an option play with Mayan? I think they ran, and it was blocked perfectly. And had it been Dallin Hayden, it would have been a 20-yard run. But with Mayan, he got back to the line of scrimmage, and he got 4 yards, and then they all closed in. And it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, waiting on him to get out there to the edge. And I like Mayan. I think Mayan has a place on this team, but he's not your every down back. Can't be. And that was proven against a good defense. I mean, he'll trample whoever. Now, maybe not Wisconsin this week, but Michigan State, Rutgers, Minnesota, he'll trample those people. But, good teams, no. Not good teams with speed, good team speed, not going to happen. So they desperately need Henderson back healthy and playing like he's capable. He's the only chance they have to establish the run game against a good team. And again, establish isn't even the right word, because we saw it against Notre Dame, a bunch of 1 and 2 yard runs, and then he breaks off a 60-yarder. And you're like, oh, we've got a run game. Well, for one play you did. So he at least gives them the hope that he might hit one big one, but there's no consistency in the run game. They were behind down in distance against Notre Dame with him. So, all day long. And that's why they only scored 17 points. So, it's not a national championship offense right now.
Steve, we are 6 days away from the first release of the college football playoff rankings. Ryan, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. Should Ohio State be ranked number 1 in the first CFP poll?
I think there is some sentiment that they've got 2 of the better wins of any team in the country right now. Georgia and Michigan certainly have not beaten anybody of that stature, even one team of that stature, let alone 2. Florida State, Oklahoma, I guess, how do you want to quantify the teams that they've played? Oklahoma certainly beat Texas when they were a top 10 team. I'm not sure how you really want to go about it. There aren't a lot of undefeated teams left. They're kind of falling by the wayside, one by one. Louisville, North Carolina, all checked out. The Pac-12's cannibalizing itself. As Washington, I think, is the only one left out there. Washington's got a great win over Oregon, but they got to keep going, certainly. So I don't know. I think you could make the case for that. It's just if you watch them play, you wouldn't think they're the number one team in the country. I mean, compared, to some of these other teams. Georgia, I've continued to have number one on my ballot for the Super 16 with the old, Ric Flair line, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And they just continue to put one win after another up on the board, although some of them haven't been all that impressive. To only beat, Auburn by 7 points with a touchdown with 3 minutes to go. And Auburn, they're not very good. So even though they're probably 4-3 or 5-2, whatever their record is, but
3 and 4.
3 and 4. So, it's apples to oranges comparisons, and Michigan still hasn't played anybody, will not play anybody till week 10 against Penn State. And then it's Penn State, Maryland, Ohio State, all back loaded for them